So, hello, welcome back to another episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. Today is an episode around various different topics, around various different things. I'm having a block full of notes that I've made like 2 days ago. Like, not yesterday, but the day before. So, I do really hope that I remember all those intentions and all those thoughts that I had. The first one, tolerant with others but strict with yourself, which as far as I remember is a quote by Marcus Aurelius. So what do you think about that? Is it smart to be strict with yourself but not so strict with others? I think to some degree, yes. To some degree, shouldn't it be like, okay, I am also not too overly strict. I think it really depends on how far one goes with being strict with oneself. Of course, I think it is good to get those things done that you need to get done, to do those things that you want to do, that you need to be doing, but some days are just not as easy. You know, life happens, things happen, and it is totally fine to also have some down days, to also have some days where you're not doing that much, unless it becomes the norm. Always something for me to focus on is unless it becomes the norm. Some people are really good at just, working hard to restrict oneself basically from doing that or from oneself happening to that. Does this make sense? No, it doesn't. Anyway, you know what I mean. But for some people, it might be a bit difficult. For some people, it might be a bit difficult to just, not get off grid. And I think the first step one could be thinking about, and I'm today in general, shining lights. I don't want to say that all of the things that I'm talking about, all of those, concepts and ideas that they work, are just shining lights. So maybe you're finding something, maybe you're encountering something that you then can use for your own life and have a better day, have a better life. Just some thoughts, basically, just some thoughts. So one has to realize this, one has to realize his or her own patterns to be able to actually do something about that and work on that. If I'm not seeing that, I can't do not that much about it. 3 to 1 and then doing something, which is a tactic that I back in the days used for the whole cold showering thing. I was, counting down from 3 to 1 and then I did what I actually do not really want to do. And it worked out quite fine. It worked out quite good, and I would still suggest it people to do when they're struggling with, I think primarily things that is something like cold showering. I for myself, I have made the experience that it does, quite well, or I do quite well when I'm just, using this quote unquote tactic. But it might also be applicable to studying things. It might be applicable to various different things. So to trying it out and seeing how it feels, I think it basically kind of gets you out of the whole doubting space. 3 to 1 and then you do something. You don't think about that much. You think about 3 to 1 and then you do whatever. Realizing it is hard, but even more proud when you have done what you wanna do. I don't fucking know what I've written down there. Loving yourself is another one which is tied to being tolerant with yourself or with others and strict with yourself. In the end, I think self-love, which is for some people really difficult, and I do really look up to those people, that it is not difficult for, because for me it is, just, not being too strict with myself and not just, going overboard with whatever the fuck I want to achieve or want to do. Sometimes it's really difficult, Also, when it doesn't necessarily lead to something that great, if you know what I mean, being busy instead of being productive, a phenomenon I believe tons of people are engaging in, or tons of people are in, and are not, necessarily realizing it. Getting things done and being busy are two completely different things. So look out for it. It's a waste of time being busy, and basically also a waste of life energy. Feeling bad, feeling like you cannot do anything else but work and you're not even getting that much done. Sounds horrible, because it is. Truthfulness, asking questions. So this is about how to love oneself, because I thought, well, loving yourself as a concept, loving yourself as a thing, as a deed to do, sounds great, is cool. but how do you actually do it? How could I do it? How could I improve in doing that? Being truthful to oneself and noticing those things that one has accomplished instead of always being like, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I haven't done anything today, but what about the things that I've already done? What about the things that I've already achieved? Whether it is, I don't know, like, depends on you. There are so many things that you probably have experienced and also achieved, and I think this is also noteworthy. Not only things that piss us off, not only things that are really bothering us in terms of we haven't done it yet or we haven't achieved it yet. Also, often without realizing that things take a lot of time, and it's those people that are, maybe good at what they're doing or maybe pretty famous at what they're doing, they have also had their, they did quite a lot of work. And most often it might not seem the case, or it might not seem like that, because it might seem like an overnight success, like my fucking overnight oats, but it isn't really the case. A lot of people really have been working hard to achieve what they have achieved, and they did things nobody else did, and maybe even just, doing this exact same thing even as a child, or from childhood on till they are, and maybe they're 20 then, and then they become successful because they have been doing it for fucking 20 years or 15, and this is quite some time. Being open to the idea, searching for things. I believe that this is something from Andrew Huberman, but I do not really remember. Being open to the idea that one can love oneself, one can be great. I think a lot of ideas, a lot of aspects that one might not see at this point of time in oneself, that one can change. This whole concept of, okay, I am maybe not good enough, but being open to the idea that I am good enough, or being open to the idea that I'm really great at this, that, and the other thing, and basically searching for insights, or searching for aspects, searching for facts, to kind of underline that, but not being like, okay, I am not this and I am not that, but being open to the idea that it might be the case either in the future, I guess, or is already the case, and I'm not just seeing it, it is a blind spot for me. Because darkness is just the absence of light. So just because I'm not seeing it doesn't necessarily mean that I am not it. It's just not there yet. It's just not there at this point in time. It's just the absence of light being the dark, Just, light isn't there, it's not, I am not dark. Reward for certain actions. The right direction. Oh, I see. Yes, being able to have this intrinsic motivation, this intrinsic reward system that actually Andrew Huberman talks about quite often in many talks, not that much on the podcast, simply because, there are so many topics that he wants to talk about, he wants to engage in, and so but most often when he is just having an interview or giving an interview, this is also something that comes up at some point, at least in 2 of the ones, or actually 3 of the ones, I guess, that I have looked up over the past few days. So being able to create one's own reward system that is not based on external things. It's not based on marks. It's not based on, some prize that you win. It's not based on some trophy that you win, but primarily based on the practice, as for example Seth Godin also points out, but just, the thing that you're doing, the craft itself, so that you probably do not get discouraged and feel bad about yourself because you haven't achieved this and you haven't achieved that and whatever the fuck, So having a reward system that is based on intrinsic things, intrinsic motivation, intrinsic thought, intrinsic intrinsicity, yes, this is totally a word, and of course this quote-unquote growth mindset. I don't like growth mindset as so many terms, I guess, because they're just overused. Everyone is using them, as well as flow state, and I don't know if all of them are using it right. I kind of don't believe in it. I don't necessarily think that all of them are using it in the right way. I think at this point, a few things might just be synonyms for, I don't know, maybe being successful, maybe doing X, Y, and Z, maybe whatever it might be. But yes, of course, having a growth mindset, seeing the glass half full instead of seeing it half empty, it is a good thing, quote unquote positive thinking. So when one is overwhelmed and or stressed, which is apparently our inner clock not being in sync with the outer clock or the external events that are happening. So for example, when my inner clock is a bit too is slow, I don't want to say it is too slow, because it is just slow, period, and the outside world is very fast, I might just get overwhelmed and or stressed. And the opposite way around as well is also not a good outcome. So apparently lateral eye movement, like this, not vertical, but lateral, like horizontal, apparently reduces stress, and that happens when we are moving forward, when we are walking. This is from an interview of Andrew Huberman with Tom Bilyeu. I think it is quite a recent one, I don't remember. I think 2020, might also be 2021. It was online, so it might have been, 1 or 2 years since then. But yeah, inner dopamine rewards I have written down: introduce positive thoughts, small wins, the process. Love yourself as if your life depends on it, which is a book. If you're into developing a greater sense of self-love, might be good to go through. I have looked up a James Clear article, James Clear summary, I guess, of that. You might also check that out. But I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't really think that there are too many great resources in that book. But I think the whole purpose of this video is having an intrinsic reward system and not relying on external events and external rewards and external prices to feel good about oneself is never wrong, and is, I think, always really good. And kind of the problem that I've been seeing, and I do not yet know how to engage with it and or how to deal with it, is, of course, when I'm playing a certain sport and there is a prize and there is a team that wins, because one team has to win unless it's a draw. But when there is a trophy, I do want to have this trophy, so I would probably feel not that great about not winning the trophy, unless you think about it in the way of, okay, I'm having this intrinsic reward system, so up to the point where I can actually get the trophy, I can get the win, I am focusing on my craft, and I'm focusing on just me doing as good as I can, and also having the focus, which basically is also something incredibly important. And apparently as an adult you can have the same neuroplasticity, basically ability to learn, basically ability to adapt your brain, or the ability of your brain to adapt as a child by having really deep focus and really good focus. So on one thing, so when you're doing something, really focusing on that, and also then defocusing, which was from the episode of the Ritual podcast with Andrew Huberman once again. I might be a bit obsessed with him in the past few days, but also incredibly interesting to keep in mind. So I think in the end, one doesn't really feel better when one needs the outside rewards, the extrinsic rewards, to feel better about oneself. I think, of course, having this trophy and winning the prize is a good thing and whatever, but when you're not winning it, because I don't know what the chances are, I don't know what, basically what the chances are, because I think there's only just so much that you can control, especially when it is about a team sport, but being able not to be completely destroyed when you're not getting this outside reward, this outside trophy, this outside whatever, and really relying on what one can create, to basically the dopamine that one creates inside of oneself, I think is always something to keep an eye on. Always something to keep in mind. But yeah, with that being said, I'm going to see you next time. I at least hope, and see you.